5 months ago, I filmed the first video of this series, and a lot has changed since then. I have more energy. I'm down 10 pounds, even through the holidays and a birthday, and my hair is different. I went back to my roots because bleaching just was not helping. Between postpartum stress, hormones, my hair was breaking so badly, it looked like I had accidental layers. But the biggest change hasn't been how I look, it's really how I've been feeling. So it all started with the results of my second round of lab work, the ones I told you I was waiting on at the end of the last video. So if you're new here, just quick context. I'm Sarah. I'm a personal trainer and nutrition coach who lost over 65 pounds more than a decade ago and kept it off until pregnancy and postpartum changed the rules. This series is me rebuilding energy, strength, and just trust in my body postpartum without extremes. So let's rewind a little bit because once again, all of my lab work came back normal. Iron, ferritin, B12, B6, A1C, lipids, metabolic panel, all technically within range. And I remember sitting there and thinking, okay, then why do I still feel off? So, this is the part of the postpartum journey I don't think we talk about enough. You advocate for yourself, you get the test done, you do the responsible thing, and you're told you're fine, but you don't feel fine. So, the doctors didn't have much else to offer me beyond reassurance. There were no red flags, there were no clear next steps. So, I started looking at the data myself. I took my results and I compared them side by side and I looked at the trends instead of just the single numbers. And to be honest, I even use my good old friend ChatGPT as a tool to help me make sense of all of it together. And this wasn't to diagnose anything or replace medical care, but it was to help me understand certain patterns and ask better questions. So, what stood out wasn't a dramatic diagnosis, it was something much quieter, actually. It was my nutrient reserves. So, iron and ferritin weren't deficient, but they weren't robust either. And then B vitamins were technically normal, but not optimal. And then my vitamin D, talked about it last time, it sat right around 24 on the lower range of normal. So, this brings me back to the theme that keeps showing up in this series. Normal doesn't always mean you are feeling good. It just means you're not setting off any alarms in a lab portal. So, instead of spiraling or jumping straight into supplement overload, I started to ask myself a different question. I asked, what are a few small, realistic shifts that I can make to support my body where it's asking for help? I wanted to focus on the vitamin D first. And right away, I'm like, I need to get outside more consistently. So I began prioritizing 15 minutes a day of getting outside, getting some daylight. It wasn't for a workout, it wasn't for tracking steps, it was just sunlight and a nervous system regulator, so to say. And some days that looked like a walk with my baby girl Ren. Some days it was just standing outside and soaking up the sun while she just played and chased after bubbles. It was like these small, boring, but surprisingly powerful things um, that seemed to help initially. Next, I focused on vitamin D in terms of nutrition. So again, vitamin D was not low, but because it wasn't optimal for me, I decided to start looking in my fridge to begin with. So I looked at the plant milks that I had to see, okay, are they fortified with vitamin D or did I just assume they were? And then I started looking at the cereals in my pantry, same thing. And then I would make sure that I was incorporating enough of them, enough servings of those to meet the vitamin D recommendation. I also began adding more salmon into my diet, and I actually brought whole eggs back in. I'll get to that in a minute, but almost a decade ago, I started to experiment with a vegan diet. And I held strong to that for a few years. And then as my life became a little more hectic in terms of like having more time constraints and things like that, I needed to shift away from that. And I would consider myself to be more plant forward, in which my meals have a ton of plants in them. And then I will supplement with some other things if needed. But anyway, I started to kind of ride the line between like vegetarianism and pescatarianism. I am a Maryland girl. I love fish. I love seafood. So I knew that that was never going to stay out of my diet forever, but adding it back in, it wasn't like super frequent, but it did happen. So anyway, I brought salmon back into my diet more intentionally and I brought whole eggs back in. With the eggs, for years, I defaulted to eating egg whites because I like volume in my meals and I could get a lot of eggs with a lot of protein in them, not a ton of fat or anything like that, minimal calories, and it would satisfy that need or want for eggs in the moment. But postpartum, those guidelines that I followed, they aren't serving my energy anymore. With that, I also started adding in some fortified orange juice. I am not a juice person, but incorporating all of these different foods was just such a strategic choice in helping me feel better overall. Around the same time, I decided to get a DEXA scan. Now, this wasn't my first one. Back in 2019, I actually had my first one, and I love the experience. I actually use a local company called Composition ID. This is not sponsored, by the way, but I use them because you schedule your appointment, you get there, and you literally lie still in a machine for 6 minutes while it scans you, and you get information that BMI could never give you. So you get to see what your overall body composition is. You get to see your muscle distribution throughout the body, fat distribution. You get to see how much visceral fat you have, and you get to see how your bone density is. That's why I love this scan. So, with this data, it doesn't tell you what to do with it, but being that I'm in the health and wellness field, I knew where to focus my energy then once I got the results back. And while I'm not sharing those results just yet, I will say this: the scan changed how I thought about my body and what I needed to do next. In the next episode, I'm going to share the results of that DEXA scan, and I'm also going to share another test I had done alongside it. And again, this data reshaped these last 5 months in terms of my training and my nutrition. So, if you find that this series has been helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and make sure you subscribe because the next episode builds directly onto this one. If you feel like you're in the same season right now, know that you're not alone. I have linked some free resources for you so you can get a free 7-day meal plan below. It includes recipes, a meal plan calendar, grocery list, and just tools to make nourishing your body a little bit easier. You can also join my email newsletter where I share all of my new recipes, workouts, and some behind the scenes. And if you want structure, if you want to train with me, then you can do that inside the RepKey Fitness app. With that, I want you to remember, you are not broken. You're not failing. Sometimes your body just needs a different kind of support. So while I'm navigating my journey and I'm focusing on my nutrition, my mindset, and my movement. I want you to do the same so that we can feel strong, bold, and healthy together.